All right, let's get right into it. We're going to break down this really fascinating personal experiment, a 24-hour dopamine reset. And look, this wasn't about some productivity hack or trying to become a super focused Zen master. Nope, the goal was way more personal. And the very first thing that broke during this experiment, well, it's probably not what you're thinking.
And there it is. That's the whole story in a nutshell. The thing that finally cracked wasn't willpower. It wasn't the constant temptation of picking up the phone. It was the mind itself. This one line just perfectly sets the stage for what this is really about. It's less about our tech and way more about what's going on inside our heads when we finally turn off the noise.
I think we all know this feeling, right? This is the why behind the whole experiment. It's not about being against technology. It's about that constant low-level buzz in your brain. That feeling of restlessness that just follows you around, even when things are supposed to be quiet. So the idea was, what happens if you try to close some of those tabs? What happens to that hum?
Okay, so that brings us to our first part, the noisy mind. We're going to set the scene here, lay out the simple rules for this 24-hour dive into digital silence. And you'll see, the setup was super simple, but the results, they were anything but.
So the rules were actually pretty straightforward. This wasn't some kind of crazy sensory deprivation thing. It was all about targeting those fast hits. You know, the quick, easy dopamine spikes you get from endlessly scrolling and refreshing your feeds. Slower, more intentional things like reading a book or going for a walk, totally fine. The real key was just cutting out that compulsive, just-in-case checking and the constant stream of new stuff.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Section 2, the mind unravels. Because as it turns out, the hardest part wasn't fighting the urge to scroll. The real challenge was dealing with a mind that has been trained to absolutely despise silence. The day wasn't some smooth, gentle slide into a state of calm. Oh no. As you can see, it was a gauntlet of distinct psychological stages. It was a real roller coaster. So let's walk through these, starting with what happened just a few hours in. The static phase.
So yeah, willpower wasn't the first domino to fall. It was the ability to just, be, to just sit there, without all that constant input from a screen, all the background noise in your head, those little anxieties, the lingering doubts, the random worries, they suddenly rushed to the front. The silence wasn't empty at all. It was full of static.
And boom, there's the big, uncomfortable truth. All that scrolling wasn't just a way to kill time. It was an active defense system. It was a wall, built brick by brick, to keep out the tough, uncomfortable questions about your life, your work, your purpose. Take away the screen, and you're left standing face to face with all of it.
By the middle of the afternoon, this thing shifted from just mental weirdness to something you could actually feel in your body. This idea of boredom panic, it's so perfect. It's that antsy, jumpy feeling in your chest, that urgent, desperate need to fill any empty space with something, anything. Your brain, starved of its usual diet of clicks and swipes, starts treating a spare minute like a 5-alarm fire.
And this is when the mind started to get sneaky. It didn't just give up, it started to negotiate. And the first offer is always so simple, so small, so seemingly harmless. Come on, just check once. What's the harm? Then, the arguments get a little more clever, a little more sophisticated. Your inner voice shifts tactics. It frames that craving for a dopamine hit as a reward. You've earned this. This isn't weakness, it's self-care, right? And finally, when the bargaining and the justifications don't work, the mind goes for the nuclear option. It just tries to tear the whole thing down. It tries to convince you that this entire experiment is pointless, arbitrary, and dumb. Because hey, if the whole thing is stupid, then there's no reason to keep going, and you can go right back to the warm, comfortable glow of the screen.
Now, this is so important because it's the total opposite of what you think. A dopamine reset, especially at the beginning, does not feel like peace and tranquility. It feels like this. It's this persistent, low-grade discomfort. It's a feeling of mental friction, where every thought is a struggle, and there's this constant nagging urge to just escape the present moment. This is exactly what our devices are so good at medicating.
But then, after hours of fighting this feeling, something started to change. And that brings us to the real turning point of this whole story, the slow dopamine shift. This is where all that struggle finally starts to morph into something new, a different kind of understanding. So the breakthrough happened pretty late in the day. After fighting that restlessness for what felt like forever, the narrator just gave in, sat on the floor, and picked up an actual physical book. It wasn't some lightning bolt from the heavens, but it was a slow,
gradual shift away from all that mental chaos.
And this led to a massive realization, this concept of slow dopamine. See, instead of the sharp high and the inevitable crash you get from a notification or a funny video, reading a book offered something totally different. It was a sustained, gentle feeling of engagement. It wasn't a spike, it was more like a warm, steady hum.
This chart really nails the difference. Fast dopamine, the kind our feeds are built on, it screams for our attention. It spikes super high, and then it crashes, leaving you feeling empty and wanting more. But slow dopamine, the kind you find in a good book or a real hobby, it's gentle, it hums, it warms you up, it sustains you, and it doesn't leave you feeling drained.
So, after all that, what's the big takeaway? We've made it to the final section. This is all about what happens after the 24 hours are over, and what this whole experience truly reveals about us.
I mean, just look at the shift in only 24 hours. It's pretty incredible. It wasn't about becoming a brand new person, it was just about getting some perspective back. You go from being completely reactionary, where every buzz controls your mood, to being intentional. From having a foggy, jumpy brain to being able to follow a single thought from beginning to end. And maybe the most amazing part, you resensitize your brain. Suddenly, a simple pleasure, like a cup of tea, can feel like a genuine reward again.
And this, right here, is the absolute truth of the whole thing. If you're looking for a quick fix that feels good, this ain't it. The first feeling you get is emptiness. But that emptiness is the whole point, because it's a space that is normally jam-packed with distractions, and it's only in that empty space that you can finally see what's really going on under the hood.
So, at the end of the day, a 24-hour reset is basically a diagnostic tool. It's not a cure-all, but it gives you this perfect, unfiltered snapshot of your own mind. It shows you precisely what you're using your phone to run away from, be it boredom, stress, anxiety, whatever. It shines a big, bright light on the cracks in your own foundation. So, if you're feeling inspired to give this a shot, here's a super simple way to start. The most important steps are putting your phone somewhere you can't easily get it, like in a drawer, not just your pocket, and having one non-digital anchor activity ready to go. And hey, even if you can't do 24 hours, trying it for just 12 can be unbelievably insightful.
And that's the final, powerful summary. This experience wasn't really about fixing brain chemistry in a single day. It was about pulling back the curtain and seeing, with total clarity, how much we depend on constant noise just to manage how we feel inside. It's an active exposure, not a magic reset button.
So, we'll leave you with this question. Just think about it for a second. When was the last time you went even 4 hours without any digital input at all? What kind of weird anxieties or brilliant ideas or long-forgotten thoughts might start bubbling up in that quiet? What would your brain actually say to you if you finally gave it a chance to speak without being interrupted?